Today's video about poker player taxes is making your payments throughout the year, your estimated quarterly payments to the IRS. So there are two ways to do it. I am going to first tell you the way I do not do it, just because poker is too inconsistent to do it, not because there's anything wrong with it. The way you can do it, this is one of your options, is to know exactly what you're going to make throughout the year and make the exact payments and get the number exactly right. I can't know what I'm going to make exactly throughout the year. When I'm making my first estimated payments in the first 3 months of the year, January, February, March, you have to make a payment on those 3 months. You have until April 15th to make that payment. I don't know what I'm going to make the rest of the year, so I can't get that number exact. If you knew exactly, I'm going to make $40,000, and you knew exactly what your deductions and you knew exactly what your tax bill was going to be, you could just pay the exact amount. And at the end of the year, the IRS will look at it, and it'll be correct, and there won't be anything to do. But it's just way too inconsistent, poker is, to be able to pull that off. So I don't do it that way. I do option number 2. Option number 2 is to base this year's taxes on last year's taxes. If you do that, the IRS won't have a problem with it. The thinking is, you're basically going to make something like what you made last year, so base this year's taxes on last year's, and that's fine. So you look at your last year's tax return, federally, for example, you see what you paid in federal taxes, and when you're making your first quarter estimated payments, first quarter, there's going to be 4 of them, you divide that number that you paid in the previous year federally, divide that number by 4, and pay that amount in your estimated tax payment for the first quarter. And if you make the exact same amount, then you paid the exact right amount. So you do that 4 times throughout the year at the federal level and at the state level, and at the end of the year, the IRS does not have a problem with the payments you've made. Now, you probably won't make the exact amount of money that you made the year before, so this is how everything gets corrected at the end of the year. If throughout the year you paid too much, which means you made less money than you made the year before, then you paid too much in taxes and you'll get a refund during tax season. If you made a lot more than you made the previous year, then you haven't paid enough, and when you do your taxes at the end of the year, you'll owe a little bit of money. But either way, whether you get a refund or you owe some money, because you were basing your estimated payments on the previous year's tax return, the IRS is not going to penalize you. There's not going to be any penalty to pay because you were doing it correctly. You were basing your estimated payments on your tax return for the previous year. Say you did option number 1 and you were just trying to figure it out yourself, so you did not base your estimated payments on your previous year's taxes. You thought, oh, I made $50,000 last year. For some reason, I know I'm going to make $25,000 this year. I don't want to make these big payments and wait for my refund. I'm just going to get it right along the way, as if I know for sure I'm making $25,000 this year. Well, if you end up making more, not only are you going to owe taxes at the end of the year, but you were not basing your estimated payments on last year's tax return. The IRS doesn't like that. And in addition to the money you owe for your taxes for this year, there's going to be a penalty because you were trying to figure it out on your own and you were not basing your payments on the previous year's tax return. So that's why I like option number 2. I'm basing my estimated payments on the previous year's income and tax return, and it's not going to be exact. I'll either get a small refund at the end of the year, or I will owe a little money at the end of the year. But either way, the IRS isn't displeased with what I did, and there's not going to be a penalty involved.
Yeah, I got it at the stadium in May.